Hello interstellar everyone, welcome to class 12 biology. In this video we will discuss about pedigree analysis. So some of the topics that we cover in this video will be: what is pedigree analysis, why do we use pedigree analysis, some of the symbols involved in pedigree analysis and their meanings, and at the end of the video I will show you two pedigree analysis charts. So let's get started. So what is pedigree analysis and why do we use pedigree analysis? To answer the first question, what is pedigree analysis? Analysis of traits in several generations of human family is called pedigree analysis. In pedigree analysis, the inheritance of a specific trait is represented in the family tree over generations. In other words, it simply means a pedigree analysis is the analysis performed in order to understand the inheritance of a specific trait within a human family. So that analysis is called as pedigree analysis, and during pedigree analysis we construct a family tree. This particular picture, right, a symbolic representation of a family tree. We construct this family tree, and by looking at this family tree we can try to understand the inheritance pattern of a particular trait. Right? How a particular trait is passed down from one generation to the next generation within a family. So that analysis is called as pedigree analysis. So the next question is, why do we use pedigree analysis, and why especially for human beings? Right? So simple answer for that will be, unlike pea plants and Drosophillas, controlled crosses are not possible in human beings. Right? Pea plants were used by Gregor Mendel. Drosophillas or Drosophila melanogaster or fruit flies were used by Thomas Hunt Morgan for their study of genetics, right? For study of inheritance, they use these model organisms in which they can easily take two pea plants and cross them and try to see what result they get, or they can just select two Drosophillas, male and a female, make them mate and try to see what results they get. We cannot do the same thing with the human beings, right? So controlled crosses are not possible in the human beings. So if you want to understand how a character is passed down from one generation to the next generation within the humans, what we have to do is we have to do pedigree analysis, in which we just look at the family tree or family history and try to see how a particular character is passed down from generation to generation within the human family. So that is why we use pedigree analysis for human beings. So over here you can see certain symbols. So we will try to describe these symbols in our next slide. So symbols used in pedigree analysis. So here we have got three symbols. Square, it represents male. Circle, it represents female. A diamond shape, it represents an individual whose sex is unknown, sex unspecified. And then we have these same three symbols over here, but the difference is they are shaded from within. So when these symbols are shaded from within, it means that these are the individuals who are affected by the trait, or who is showing that particular trait which we are trying to observe, right? Or which we are trying to understand the inheritance pattern of. So individuals who are showing the trait, we will represent them with shaded symbols. So now these are the individuals, and now in the next slide we will try to understand how these individuals can be interrelated, or how they are related with each other. The first one will be two individuals joined together by a straight horizontal line. That represents mating, right? This symbol represents mating. So these two are biological mates, a husband and wife. And then over here, there is a male and a female joined together by two horizontal lines, and this symbol represents consanguineous mating. Consanguineous mating means mating between relatives. So mating between relatives, close relatives, it is called as consanguineous mating, and it can be represented with two horizontal lines. And now we have a male and a female biological mates, and then this line is connected to three individuals just a step below them. So these three individuals represent their children. So these two are parents, and the three individuals just below them, they are their children. Now the important thing to remember over here is the order in which the children are written from left to right. They should be written according to their age, or the year in which they were born, right, according to their age. So the eldest one should be to the left and the youngest one should be to the right. So here we can see that the eldest children is daughter, middle one is also a daughter, and the youngest one is a son, right? So this son, you can clearly see that he is shaded over here. So it means that he is the one who is showing the trait in the family. Okay, so these are the symbols that we use in pedigree analysis. So in the next slide, we will try to see an example of a pedigree analysis. And in this particular example, we try to see how an autosomal dominant trait is passed down from one generation to the next generation. Right. So in examinations, you may not be given it is an autosomal dominant trait. You may have to try to analyze just this particular picture, and then you have to tell whether it is autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive trait. So you have to guess, right? You have to do an informed guess. So here I have given you autosomal dominant trait over here, right? In this one you can see a male and a female, right? And then these individuals, they are meeting. These are the parents, first generation, represented by a Roman numeral, and then they have children over here, right? Children 1, 2 and 3. 2, 3 and 5, these three individuals are their children. And then these children, for example, the eldest daughter, she married with a man, and then they had their own children, right? And then their second child, the male who is showing the trait, he also married with the female, another female, and then they also had child. So we can say these two are parents or grandparents. These are parents, and these are their grandchildren. So you can just simply imagine in that particular way. So let's try to define what trait it can be. So let's assume that this particular trait is for black hair. So let's say we have two contrasting traits for the hair color, black and white. So and let's say for our convenience that the black hair is the dominant trait. Okay, so black hair is the dominant trait, represented by whose allele can be represented by capital B, since it is dominant, and a small b for the white hair, since it is recessive. So now by looking at this particular pedigree chart, right, we can try to come up with the genotypes of these individuals. So what could be the genotypes of these individuals, right? So I have one important tip over here. The tip will be, if the trait is autosomal dominant, just by looking at this particular chart and understanding the symbols and its meanings, can we guess exactly the genotypes of individuals in this particular chart? Just think for a moment. Can we guess the genotype of these individuals over here, right? Did you come up with an answer? So the simple tip will be, right, if the trait is autosomal dominant, the individuals who are not showing the trait, right, the individuals who are not showing the trait, the individuals who are not shaded from within, the ones who are not showing the trait, we can easily guess their genotype. So they will be with the genotype homozygous recessive. So I can straight away write two small b's over here, right, and two small b's over here, 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 and two small b's in all the unshaded parts, right? It's because that will be the only genotype who will not be expressing the dominant trait, that is the black hair color. Okay, so those who are having white hair color, they are bound to have homozygous recessive genotype. So, but what about this particular individual, number 2, right, the grandparent, right, the female? What will be her genotype? So that we have to guess, right? This one we already know that it is homozygous recessive. Now what about this one? It can be homozygous dominant, or it can be heterozygous dominant. So what are the possibilities? So there are two possibilities over here. So now we have to pinpoint out of these two which one is the correct genotype. That we have to look at their children. So they have got 3 children over here, 1, 2 and 3. They have got 3 children over here, and inside in their children there is this particular eldest daughter who is showing what? White hair color. So since she is showing white hair color, we know that it will be homozygous recessive over here, 2 small b's over here. That means she got 1 small b from this individual and 1 small b from this individual. So by looking at their children, we can rule out that homozygous dominant genotype is not possible for this particular parent. Right? The grandmother cannot be homozygous dominant because she has to give 1 small b in order to have a daughter with white hair. So I hope it is clear, right? Since this is 2 small b, so she has to be heterozygous for the character. All right. So we will look at one more example. Let's look at this one, X-linked recessive trait. You can either call it X-linked or you can call it sex-linked recessive trait. So the trait is recessive, remember that, right? Only when an individual is homozygous recessive, the trait will be observed. Otherwise, it won't be observed. But here, the difference is X-linked recessive trait, the difference will be both the X chromosomes should have the recessive allele or the allele for that particular trait in order to express that particular trait. Okay, so otherwise it won't express. So it should be homozygous all the time. So now over here I have given you this particular pedigree chart, and in this one you can clearly see that the 2 parents, they are not showing the trait. They are not showing the trait, but if you look at their children, they also have got 3 children. If you look at their children, out of these 3 children, their son, the middle one, their son, he is showing that particular trait, right? And then if you look further down at their grandchildren, you can see that their son, this also grandson is also suffering from, also showing that particular recessive trait. And by looking down over here, great grandson also showing the recessive trait. So if you look at the particular chart and if you see that it is always the male who is showing that particular trait, we can say that it is X-linked. Right? We will understand why it is X-linked. So let's take an example of color blindness. So color blindness is a sex-linked or X-linked recessive trait. So what we have is we can represent allele like this. So the X chromosome, which is carrying capital B, is dominant or normal eyesight, and the X chromosome which is carrying the recessive allele or small b, that will be the gene for color blindness. Okay, so in order to express that particular trait, the individual need to be homozygous, or the X, both the X should be carrying 2 small b's. Right? Now, if you think properly, the male individuals, they will have 1 X chromosome and 1 Y chromosome. Females will be having 2 X chromosomes. So for the females to be colorblind, the female should have 2 X chromosomes with 2 small b's. Right? Both the X chromosomes should be carrying the recessive colorblind gene. So then only she will be colorblind. Otherwise, she won't be colorblind because it's a recessive trait. Whereas for the males, since they have only 1 X chromosome, if he inherits this X chromosome from the mother, what will happen? He will be colorblind. Why? Because of the Y chromosome, right? He has got only 1 X chromosome, and along with that he has 1 Y chromosome, and the Y chromosome does not have the colorblind gene. Okay, so let's try to determine the genotype of the parents. So what could be the genotypes of the parents? So this will be, over here we can say that this individual, right, this particular individual, since he is suffering from the color blindness, we can say that he is carrying the recessive colorblind gene on its X chromosome, on its lone X chromosome, and Y chromosome has got no role. so he will be colorblind. Now just by looking over here, we can try to guess the genotype of the parents. So can you do that? Right. By looking at this, we can guess the genotype. Since this father is having normal vision, he will be X with the dominant allele and Y. So he got this son got Y from his father. And this particular mother, even though she is not colorblind, she is carrying the allele, recessive allele for the color blindness on one of her X chromosomes. Whereas one of her X chromosomes is carrying the dominant allele, and therefore she has got normal vision, because this particular X chromosome with the normal vision is compensating for this X chromosome with colorblind allele. So in this particular female, even though the trait is not observable, she is carrying the allele for the recessive or colorblind allele. This X chromosome is carrying the recessive colorblind allele. So this son must have got, unluckily, he must have got this X with recessive allele, and therefore he is colorblind. Now remember, there is also a chance that the son can be normal. When can the son be normal? If he receives, obviously he will receive Y from the father, and if he receives this X with P, then he will have normal vision. Otherwise he will have color blindness, right? So there is 50-50 chance that in such parents the son can either be colorblind or he can have normal vision. So that is the possibility. So that is how you do a pedigree analysis. I hope I am clear about this one. If you think that I have not done a good job of explaining how to do the pedigree analysis, I want you to pause the video and look at the chart one by one, and then try to solve this chart on your own, so that your understanding becomes much stronger regarding how to do pedigree analysis, because this is important. You have to study this not just for your board examinations, but for your practical exam as well. I think in one of your practical examinations you have to do a pedigree analysis. So that's the end of the pedigree analysis. In the next video we will talk about genetic disorders, and specifically Mendelian disorders, Mendelian genetic disorders. So please read about that for the next video. Thank you.